From having a technique that chokes opponents in the octagon, to being seemingly unbeatable with an 8-win streak, here are the reasons why fighters are really scared of Aljamain Sterling. And skillfully choking opponents has a lot to do with it. Aljamain Sterling comes from a wrestling background, so he makes good use of those skills in the octagon and his abilities truly shine on the ground. The reigning bantamweight champion isn't just a smart fighter, he's very technical too. He knows how to dominate his opponents, and he for sure knows how to get them right where he wants them. Want to know the secret to Aljamain's technique? He wears his opponents down over time with his strikes. This comes with a variety of kicks and punches in sensitive areas to weaken them. And as soon as they hit the ground, it's game over for them. His aggressive backtaking is a fan favorite, but his opponents are terrified of it. Sterling's MMA game isn't just jiu-jitsu. He makes use of wrestling and a great deal of grappling to make sure he walks out victorious. And what fighters fear the most while facing him in the ring is his chokehold. The MMA star is a master on the ground, and he's got all sorts of chokes in his system. But the rear naked choke is undeniably his favorite, and many of his victories have been won this way. Like that time he choked Cody Sandhagen at UFC 250. I can't forget that one, can I? And during his time at the Cage Fury Fighting Championships, all 3 of his title defenses were won through rear naked chokes. And it was definitely what earned him the UFC's attention. As if Sterling's chokes weren't scary enough for fighters, his athleticism only adds to it. Sterling's physique is crazy, and I can see how it can be intimidating for his opponents. I mean, he's definitely one of the most shredded fighters in the UFC. Fans even joke about how his body fat is probably in the negatives because all he's got is muscle mass. Honestly, fighters don't even need to be in the ring with Sterling to be terrified of him. His training routine is enough to scare them. Come on, of course he trains like crazy. That physique came from somewhere, right? The man deadlifts 300 pounds like it's nothing to him. His athletic build gives him fair endurance. And he's won his fair share of fights through decisions. At only 5 feet 7 inches, Aljo's got a 71-inch reach, and he definitely makes full use of it in the cage. Despite his strength, he moves fluidly around the octagon, and he has the fuel tank of a monster truck. Yeah, he never gasses out. The 33-year-old athlete keeps his opponents on their toes throughout the fight. A slight moment of weakness and they're done. Funkmaster makes use of angles in a way no other fighter in the UFC does. He's got the strangest tricks. You can see Aljo place a hook on the back end of a kick, or he'll sweep in with a series of lunging punches. And that puts his reach advantage to some good use. As a natural athlete, his coordination, explosive skills, and plasticity is on another level. All this combined with his wrestling skills makes him a master in the octagon. Plus, Sterling isn't a man of just technique. Don't let his groundwork fool you, because he's got the power to knock down his opponents too. Yeah, this man can hit, and he can hit hard. He strikes the perfect balance between technique and sheer power, and that's rare to find in fighters. Most of his victories are submissions and chokes, but he's got some KOs in his record too. So when you walk in the cage with him, just know that if you somehow stay on your feet and don't give him a chance to choke you, he's got everything he needs to knock you down. It was only Sterling's second fight in the UFC when he pounded Hugo Vienna out in the 3rd round. Funkmaster was paving his way up there, and a knockout in his second fight just proved that he wasn't someone to be taken lightly. Aljo's KO at UFC 280 is one for the books. His fight with TJ Dillashaw was hyped. He had no option but to walk out with a victory at Yas Island in the UAE. Dillashaw said some heated words about his opponent before the fight, and the Funkmaster had a lot at stake here. So once we heard the opening bell, Aljo didn't waste any time in dragging the fight to his waters. He took his opponent down in the opening moments and seemingly also injured his shoulder. I told you, he hits hard. Dillashaw's team was able to pop his shoulder back into place, but he still didn't last long in the cage. Sterling finished the fight in the 2nd round with a TKO, and by doing this, he sent a message to all the fighters out there. Aljamain Sterling isn't one to be messed with. He'll take you down and he won't feel sorry for it. It's kind of obvious that UFC fighters are terrified of him. Why wouldn't they be? He's the whole freaking package. His fighting style is legendary. I mean, there's a reason why he's called the Funkmaster after all. Sterling's wrestling is unique. He took up the sport in high school, and his love for it made him pursue it in college too. Somewhere around then, he became the Funk Master and learned all these crazy wrestling techniques that have taken him to many places. His style lacks fundamental skills, but it doesn't matter because he knows his way around, and that makes him the Funk Master. Aljo uses his flexibility to stretch and contort his opponents' bodies. This makes it difficult for them to break out, and the only thing that's left for them to do is tap. In this way, he dominates all his opponents. Once they step into the octagon with Sterling, it's his cage and he controls the game. And if you think fighters can train against his funky techniques, you're wrong. Sterling's fighting style is anything but textbook. He's one of the most unpredictable fighters in the UFC. Yes, it's almost impossible to plan against him because you never know what he's going to bring to the table. Everyone's going to be scared of something they can't train against. That's kind of a given. Imagine walking cluelessly into the cage and not knowing which of his many techniques Aljamain Sterling is going to use against you. Aljo doesn't go by a standard, he makes his own fight. An example of his unpredictable fighting style was seen in his fight with Peter Yan at UFC 273. Sterling was making use of sharp kicks while dancing outside Peter's range. For more than half a round, Peter was so focused on figuring out the rhythm of the circling Sterling, he couldn't throw out any strikes. With Aljo, you never know what's next. An outside kick or an uppercut. It could be anything. The Uniondale native is never bored in the ring. He's full of style and unique talents. When one thing doesn't go his way, he opts for another because our dude's got options. Fighters are terrified of him because they know their grappling has nothing on Aljo's grappling. He's the master. At this point, do I even have to give more reasons as to why Sterling's one of the scariest fighters in the UFC? I'll add more to my list. Because the Funk Master isn't only good with his hands, he's good with his words too. Aljamain's trash talking only makes him more intimidating. If someone knows how to send his opponents a warning before their fight, it's Sterling. From face-to-face trash talking to an exchange of hot words on social media, Aljo knows how to dominate before a fight too. Just last month, he posted a video on Instagram trash talking with his upcoming opponent Henry Cejudo. Sterling captioned his post, "I can't wait to remind you why you retired in the first place, homie." He's sending a message. And I hope Henry knows he isn't just about to face any other UFC fighter. It's Aljamain Funk Master Sterling. This fight is going to be massive. The bantamweight champion has a history of sending intimidating messages through social media. He loves posting clips of his intense training sessions prior to his fights. And let me tell you that they'll scare anyone who's about to face him in the ring. Videos of him showing how strong his punches are using a strength testing machine. Yeah, I'd be terrified for my life because he's got some real power. And more than anything, what scares fighters the most is that Aljo doesn't lose. He's seemingly unbeatable in the ring and he's on an 8-win streak. I'm not saying he's undefeated. He's lost 3 fights in the UFC. But Sterling walking out of the octagon without a victory is a rare sight. So when fighters are about to face the title holder in the ring, they know that the chances of them winning are very slim. And who's not going to be scared of someone they barely stand a chance against? Sterling hasn't lost a fight since his 2017 loss to Marlon Moraes. And it doesn't look like he's going to lose one anytime soon. The MMA star is in his prime and more shredded than ever, and he's the reigning champion. So from being seemingly unbeatable in the ring with an 8-win streak, to having a technique that chokes opponents in the ring, those were the reasons why fighters are really scared of Aljamain Sterling.